Welcome to Black History, our second Black History Monday. Today we have Mrs. Robin Harrington. She currently works as a assistant professor, program chair for the Human Service Program at Ivy Tech College in Salisbury. She is from Louisville and is a graduate of the University of Louisville, Kent School of Social Work. She received a Master of Science in Social Work and complete 12 graduate hours as PAM African Studies. Northern Kentucky, where she completed her undergraduate degree in organizational leadership across the connections in women, gender studies, and communication. Robin has 10 years experience in higher education, as which she incorporated a student advocacy and holistic approach in assisting students with meeting their personal and academic goals. She serves as the JCTC co-chair for Achieving the Dream 2.0 for African American student success. Currently, she works as a social worker educator, a clinical social worker, and community advocate in the greater Louisville and southern Indiana region. As a clinical social worker, she provides mental health services to underrepresented minorities populations that has limited access to the quality mental health services. She is currently a member of Black Lives Matter in Louisville Healing Team. She supports Future Black Human Services professional. It is an important part of her job as a social worker educator. Robin loves to serve her local community and provide consulting and support several local nonprofits. She serves as a board member for the following organization: the Play Cousin Collective, West Louisville Math and Science Project, and Zora Cradle. Now I turn it over to Ms. Harrington. Robin, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that, you all. I am a Zoom. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm a Zoom super user, so Microsoft Teams is really kicking my butt today. But when it's all said and done, I will be a super user. So thank you all so much for being here today. As technology would have it, my camera does not want to act right, but I do have pictures in here, so you can see me. So for today's session, with this being the second session that you all are having at Henderson, one of the things that I wanted to jump into today is the term Sankofa. And in our presentation, we're going to look at Sankofa. To go forward, we must go back. An exploration of her story, our story, and purpose. And our overview today is pretty simple. We're going to have a couple introductions that we're going to go over. I'm going to talk a little bit about my story and how my history and heritage impacted my education and career path. And then next steps in terms of what does it look like to move forward as a society. And then we will have our open discussion, question, and answer. So introduction, one of the things in traditional West African culture, we have someone called the griot. And the griot or jelly is someone who is responsible for sharing the culture of the community. I come to you all today as a griot of sharing my history, community history, and just our overall collective history. As in West African tradition, griots, they are often referred to as historians, advisors, and storytellers. There is no word in the English language that includes all of their functions. Griots, their most important thing to the society is to hold the stories of the past, to share to others in order to understand the present and prepare for the future. And so our theme today is really going to be that in order for us to move forward, we have to understand our current situation, the present, but we also have to go back. And that ties into the tradition of the Akan people with the Sankofa bird. San means return, Ko means go, Fa means look, seek, and take. The word Sankofa comes from the Akan tribe in Ghana. The full literal translation of the word and the symbol means it is not taboo to fetch what is at risk of being left behind. So one of the things that I really want us to kind of just get ourselves situated today is, as much as we want to move forward and just get past, we still have to look to the past to really understand those lessons from history, how we are positioned right now in present time, and then what does that mean for the future? This next slide that I have, you all, it is a video, and in traditional, you know, in African cultures, anytime that we are getting into, especially paying respect and homage to our culture, it is not uncommon for us to take time to honor our ancestors, and two, to acknowledge our elders, because it's very much speaks to the respect and that we have for those two entities. This particular video we're gonna watch, it's about 2 minutes. The audio is not the best, but I want you to pay attention to the message, because in terms of when we're looking at moving forward, there's a lot that we need to look back to. And this is not just something that's dealing with Black history, but it's dealing with American history, and then on the larger scale, global history. This video is about 2 minutes, but it really, like I said, it puts things into context, and I wanted to be able to set the tone for how we're gonna move forward in the rest of this presentation. And this is a poem created by Ray Hagens called Oath to the Ancestors. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry. It appears the sound is not coming through. Let me start this again. I do apologize, you all. You all, please bear with me. I do apologize. I am not sure what is going on with this thing.
Miss Harrigan, if it's not going to work, can you share that video with us in the link in the chat option?
Yes, I can.
That way we're not holding up time from your presentation.
Yes, okay. Okay, you all. I will put that in. I will share the link to that. Okay, that did not make or break what we were doing. Let me go ahead and get to the next part of our presentation. But in general, that particular piece was to just kind of set the tone. Okay. So where we're at now, getting into my story. And so one of the things that I just wanted to share briefly is, you know, I'm always telling my little one, my son, you know, we are history. Every day we're making history. And so I just wanted to briefly just kind of go over what does that history look like and how has that just impacted all realms of my life. So one of the things, I'm 41. I'm born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. On my maternal side of my family, they've migrated from Decatur, Alabama, Huntsville area, Limestone County area, Alabama, to Louisville, Kentucky, between the late 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Part of that migration, which is part of the Great Migration that was coming out of the South during that time, due to just, you know, Jim Crow South laws and just trying to find better jobs. Many Black families have a similar story. Some of my family went further up on my maternal side, went further up to New York, and some just got to Louisville and was like, hey, we're not going any further. We're just going to stay right here. And so we had 3 waves out of my maternal family that came up here. It was my great uncle, along with his wife and his children. Then we had another wave of aunts and uncles that came up. And then my maternal grandmother, she finally came up as part of that 3rd wave. Let me backtrack. My great grandmother, she was part of the 2nd wave that came up here. And then she sent for my grandmother to come to Louisville. So I find that very interesting, just the different waves of how that migration worked. Then on my paternal side, that side of my family is out of Natchez, Mississippi. And so the same with that side, there were different waves of how people were migrating from both sides of my family up to the Louisville area. And just like on my maternal side of the family, we did have one side of the family that went far out west to California. We had one part of the family that I just found out about that went to Paducah, Kentucky. And then the rest, then we had another side that went to New York. And then everyone else stayed here in the Louisville, Kentucky area. One of the new Black history facts that I just learned about, that my younger sister and another cousin of mine are researching, we've heard about that our great-great-grandmother, Ella Barnett, was of Lakota Sioux background from Wyoming. And so after some extensive digging and research and going through census records, we were able to find her information on census records. And this has really been, you all, within like the last maybe 6 months. So we are very excited about this information. And it was from that information we learned about some more family members that are in Paducah, Kentucky. So this is just so exciting right now. We never knew we had family in Paducah. So moving from that, collectively, when I think about my grandmothers, and this little lady over here in the blue, this is my paternal grandmother. And she, I believe, will be 85 or 86 next month. And she is one of the keepers of our history. And I do speak to her quite a bit in learning more. And I love talking to her, just getting to know more about her childhood and just how she viewed life. One of the things that my paternal grandmother has told me, as well as my mother has told me, is about the work, the women's work, the work that Black women did during these times. And one of the stories that really stood out to me was how you have these hopes and dreams and aspirations of wanting to be a teacher, an architect, all these great things, but because the way society was set up during the early 1900s and the 1930s and 40s and 50s, Black people, and then when we get down looking at gender, Black women may not have had those same opportunities for those because the jobs did not allow that. And so my grandmothers and my great grandmothers, they worked as laundress, they worked as domestic workers, maids, whether they were in Mississippi or they were in Alabama or different things like that. And so one of the things that I try to keep in mind is that I never looked down on that or was ashamed of that. Is because I understand there were systematic things in place that allowed that to happen. My maternal grandfathers and great grandfathers, they actually owned land in Limestone County, Alabama. They were farmers. One of my great grandfathers, my aunt was joking, saying he very much was a city man. He didn't have much, he didn't want to deal too much with the farm. He let the other folks deal with that. He spent most of his time in Huntsville and in other parts of doing business. So I thought that was a funny little tidbit. My maternal grandmother, I want to say, I'm not sure the exact year, maybe like the early 80s. She went back to school to become a dental hygienist. She actually attended the University of Louisville Dental Hygienist School and became a dental hygienist, and that was one of her proudest accomplishments. Another thing that's part of our history is some of my older cousins, they played a significant role in the development of the Pan-African Studies program at U of L. Their role was basically, they were college students. So this is coming out of the end of the Black Power movement in the late 1960s, 1968, 1969, where the Pan-African Studies and Black Studies movement was huge across college campuses. So here in little old Louisville, Kentucky, my cousins were very instrumental and outspoken in, going to the administration, advocating for University of Louisville to have a Pan-African Studies program. The program, I believe, is in its 45th year at University of Louisville. So that's very exciting to know that some of that advocacy that occurred where there is a Pan-African Studies program happened because of some of my older cousins. So that's very exciting news. And carrying on in this tradition, I didn't know this at the time in 1995, but I, along with a few other of my classmates, we helped organize and implement the first Black History Month celebration at my high school. We didn't have one. We were quite taken aback that there wasn't anything. And so we worked with my history teacher, Mr. Bryant, who was African American, and our English teacher, Mr. Cobb, who was white, in helping to do this. And so this is something that I've been very proud about, because even being out of high school, as long as I have, that tradition carried on. And so my classmates and I, we are very excited that we were a part of that. So when I look at the history of everything I just shared and how this ties into my education and career path. So as I was putting this together this past week, one of the things that I thought about was James Brown's song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. That is one of my favorite songs. But that also encompasses how, I really felt about my education and my career path. Ever since at the age of 5, I knew I wanted to first be an archaeologist. But I was like, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. I've always been fascinated with people and cultures and religion, language, just all things that make up culture has always fascinated me at a young age. Part of that I didn't include in the previous slide was the role my mother played. My mother's in this picture right here. This is my graduation at Northern Kentucky. My mother played a huge impact in the way she presented history to us about our culture. I remember when I was younger, watching movies like Shaka Zulu on winter break. I was in, I think, 5th or 6th grade when I watched Shaka Zulu, and was just amazed and just so much, just learning about the history of the Zulu tribe and colonization. I remember my mom making us watch the story of Billie Holiday and Mahogany and all these movies that she wanted us to watch. And I was like, why is she making us watch all these old movies? As I've gotten older and as I've moved, moving through different spheres of my life, I think about how each of those movies helped shape my own Black identity, my identity as a woman. The reasons why eventually I wanted to become a history teacher is because I knew the importance of seeing those images in that history when I was in 5th and 6th and 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. I think back to high school when I started reading a lot more books by Maya Angelou. I remember my English teacher, I cannot think of his name is escaping me right now, but he told us, pick anything you want to read, anything. And I remember he came to me and said, because I was having some troubles my sophomore year, and I remember my teacher came to me and said, I want you to check out Maya Angelou's book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and tell me what you think. So I remember reading that book, and from that point, I wanted to read everything by her. And so I think about how that impacted me, her stories, her history, all these things played a significant impact on my education and career path. So much so when I was ready to graduate my senior year, I initially went to school at Western Kentucky University to be a history teacher. Was my primary focus was being a history teacher and focusing in on history, Black history in Kentucky. Of course, things changed. I realized once I got down to Western Kentucky University, you actually had to do some work. I partied just a tad bit too much and was unable to finish. So I came back, started at JCTC, got my Associate of Arts in Social and Behavioral Science. I went to work for a while, worked in the field, did some things, and then I decided to go return to school. I returned to school in 2007, and that was at JCTC. Graduated, and then I started at Northern Kentucky in 2009. And by this time, you all, I'm in my 30s, and I'm really having to just get degrees complete. But during this time, while I'm over here trying to get degrees complete, I had this huge community organizing work that I was doing. I was wanting to put together all these cultural things in the community, dealing with Kwanzas and just raising awareness about all these different things. So long story short, when I realized, wait a minute, there's actually a world for me. I actually can pursue a degree in social work. I actually can take Pan-African study classes, and all these things that I'm doing for fun, there's actually something I can do. So now, I started out, when I started working at JCTC, it was January 2011. That's when I started my career as a higher education professional. Fast forward, here we are. I'm a social worker. I'm an educator. I'm currently, working towards to be fully licensed as a licensed clinical social worker. I work as a mental health therapist, and I'm still involved in the community. All these things you all came to fruition based on that history, based on the needs of what it means to be, what it means to be a Black woman, what it means to be Black in this society during this time. So when we talk about the historical impact, here's just a few of just some of the things that went through my mind and still go through my mind. I wanted to accomplish what was denied to my ancestors, what my maternal grandmother was unable to do, because my maternal grandmother, may she rest in peace, as smart and as beautiful and kind and as hardworking as this woman was, my grandmother only had a 6th grade education. And she was, she lived in Alabama during a time where it was segregated. It was not great. We're talking about Jim Crow South. So my grandmother, when she came up to Louisville with her 6th grade education, my grandmother was a hard worker. So she worked at in the most affluent neighborhoods in Louisville, Kentucky, for some wealthy white families. Once that work started to shift and change in the late 70s to early 80s, my grandmother, from what I remember, she got a job working in housekeeping as she was a housekeeping supervisor at the Holiday Inn. So I always think about that story of my grandmother, of why I do what I do, because it's because of her, and not just her, all my other foremothers and forefathers. I wanted to be able to increase the awareness about the importance of my culture, my experience, and my existence. But I also want to change that to our culture, our experience, and our existence. Because right now, that's very important, that we, it's not just saying Black Lives Matter or this matters or that matters. It's also understanding, what does that mean? It's not just some political piece. We're talking about lives here. We're talking about people you work with, people that come into your classroom, people you see in the grocery store. Because a lot of people aren't educated about, when we talk about culture and the experience and that existence. And then I wanted to be an activist, and I wanted to be a mover and shaker, like people like Fannie Lou Hamer, Ida B. Wells, Sojourner Truth, my favorite, Maya Angelou, and Frederick Douglass. All these wonderful people who have did such great things. Dorothy Height, who's a social worker, and her commitment, not just her commitment to everything pertaining to helping people have good, social welfare. I also wanted to understand how political and social structures oppress people. What does that look like? How does that happen? And what can we do to dismantle these social and political systems? And at the end of the day, it was about advocacy. Nelson Mandela, I included this quote because to me it summed up so much. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So with my social work education, my Pan-African studies, my degree in organizational leadership, and those areas of concentrations in communication and women and gender studies, and all the classes that I took at probably all the different KCTCS campuses when I was getting my associate's degree, all that has set me up for the position I'm in right now and moving forward in changing the world. When we're looking at how to move forward, In this part of the presentation, this is where it gets a little uncomfortable. It's not as warm and fuzzy as we want it to be. But as I thought long and hard about this presentation, this particular section, how do we present this? How do we move forward? We keep hearing people saying, well, we're post-racial. We should just move forward. When we look at what happened January 6th at the Capitol, there was a lot of different reactions. You had reaction one that was like, I'm not shocked. This is America. That was my reaction. I'm not shocked. I wouldn't expect nothing less. You had reaction two. Oh my gosh, this isn't America. Oh my goodness, this is awful. And then you had reaction three that was just dazed and confused, like I have no idea what's going on. And then there were several others. I want to focus in on reaction one and two. I'm team reaction one. I'm not shocked or surprised. Because when I think about stories both of my grandmothers told me about not just being in deep woods, Alabama, but right here in the great state of Kentucky, and just specifically focusing on Jefferson County where I'm at, and I'll even say Bullitt County, because there's some stories, there's some things that's happened down there historically. You had reaction one saying, we're not surprised that this happened. We're not shocked, because some of us, we've been on that receiving end. Some of us, our families have been on the receiving ends where the reason why we hightailed it out of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, or whatever, and headed north was because of mobs and clans of people who did not like you for the color of your skin. So we didn't expect, this is nothing new to us. But then you have reaction two saying, well, but this isn't us, we're better than this. So I've even had conversations to say, are we? Or are we being selective and participating in revisionist history? So as we're trying to move forward to this collective purpose, we have to practice what the Sankofa saying is about. We have to go back. We have to go back and look and ask ourselves, what happened? Have we really had these heartfelt conversations? Have we really sat down to apologize to those who felt like it has been pretty rough? So I posed this question to my human services social work students every semester. When has the United States of America been fair and just to all citizens? And this is just something for you to think about, because if we're really going to move forward and if we're really going to have an honest dialogue, then we have to ask this question: when has the United States of America been fair and just to all citizens at the same exact time? That's where we're at. So when we're talking about how to move forward as a society, and I looked at this, you all, as simply as I would do if I was working with a client. If I have a client that's coming to me saying, Miss Robin, Mrs. Harrington, I'm at an impasse. I'm at a place right now in my life that everything's out of control, and it's just nothing's working at all. And I want to move forward from this, and I want to get better, but I don't know how to move forward. How do I do this? My first question would be, okay, well, you know what? Let's identify, let's acknowledge the problem. What have you done? What are you doing that caused the problem? So that's where we're at right now, you all. We're still at step one. Are we willing to identify, acknowledge, and acknowledge the problem or problems? The next step, how do you directly or indirectly impact the problem? Are you part of the problem? Are you the problem? That's directly. Indirectly, do you see the problems occurring and you're just like, well, it's not impacting me, so I'm gonna keep moving, you know? Or, you know, I may support this particular talking figure and I may be an advocate of this particular policy, but I'm not out here calling people names and I'm not throwing rocks at them. Well, you're indirectly impacting the problem. And then we have to get to the other part. How does your attitudes, beliefs, and worldview impact the way you interact with others that are different? Bullet point 3, you all, everyone, is where we're at right now. Is we can't just skip past everything. We can't just skip past and not talk about these things that occur. We have to actually sit down and examine our attitudes, beliefs, and how our worldview impacts the way we do things. We also have to look at how this is from what I use when we're assessing someone's motivation to change. This is part of motivational interviewing. How motivated are you to address the problem in a productive manner? How motivated are you to see positive change come about? These are questions that if you truly want to move forward, or we get to a place where, get to a better place than where we're at now, all these 4 things are things that we have to do individually and within our families and even within our respective communities. This is not going to make you feel good. This is ugly. It is your feelings are going to be hurt. A lot of people's my feelings may be hurt, but that's part of it. I always tell people, we talk about change is the best thing that happened to the butterfly. Well, do we really know what's going on in that cocoon once that caterpillar starts the process of making the cocoon and they're in there? All we know is after, a little while, and I'm not a entomologist, so I'm not sure how long that process takes from caterpillar to butterfly. But my point is that a seamless, easy process? Or is that caterpillar just really going through some crazy things in that cocoon? But when it's all said and done, we see the final product. We see those beautiful monarch butterflies. We have a lot of those in my neighborhood. We have a lot of butterflies that come around springtime. And I always think about that beauty of the butterfly. But then I always think about, gosh, what did that poor little caterpillar have to go through to get to what we see now? That's kind of where we're at. There's going to be a lot that occurs that's going to make us feel uncomfortable, but the outcome, you all, is so beautiful. We just need to figure out how to get there. So I want you to just think about these questions because this is where we'll get into the next step. Moving forward, ways to it. So when we're trying to move forward, we are at the basic line. I'm not coming here today with all the solutions because I don't have them, but I'm just coming to you as one who is a community, who's involved in my local community, who is at the, working at many levels to address some of the issues we have in our community in Louisville. How do we address culture? We know culture is comprised of so many things. This particular information, I got it from my Theory and Practice of Counseling and Psychotherapy by Gerald Corey. This particular section is dealing with how to be a culturally competent practitioner. So if you're working as an admissions advisor, or you're working as a biology professor, whatever your particular role is, you are practicing within that particular realm. You are a practitioner. You're going to encounter different people. You're going to have different people in your classes. I worked in admissions for over, I've worked in admissions probably for about 4 years. 3 years at JCTC, 1 year at Ivy Tech. And one of the things I know that working when you are the face of your college and you're out here trying to get people to come to your college, there's a lot that goes into that. One of the things that made our department at JCTC, at the time I was there, so effective in our recruiting strategies was, we were very diverse. So this part right here is just something for us to consider, is things that we can do individually. We want to take the time to learn about our own cultural background and how that has influenced our thinking. This is the first, I need to go back. This is the first step that we need to start at in terms of understanding how we move forward. We need to identify our own issues. We need to look at our own biases. We need to look at how we view race, gender, class, spirituality, and religion and sexual orientation. You need to examine, where did you obtain your knowledge about culture? And then be willing to identify and examine your own personal worldview and any prejudice you may have about other racial groups. And then moving forward, learn to pay attention to the common ground that exists among people of different backgrounds. And that's basically where we all overlap. And then the last part is, remember that practicing from a multicultural perspective can make your job easier and can be rewarding for both, in this section, both for you and your clients, but I would like to say both for you and your students or whoever you're interacting with. So these are the base steps, you all, if we're trying to move forward, where we have to start at with ourselves individually. Judge James Baldwin said it so greatly, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And that's where I'm going to end this presentation before we open up for question and answers. That just let that resonate with you for a second. Nothing can be changed until it is faced. So now we have time for questions, discussions, open discussions, and thank you all so much. I look forward to hearing some of your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. I really appreciate it. I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Please raise your hand and I will acknowledge. Please keep your questions short so we can have time for other people to ask questions. I also put the survey in the chat. But one of the things I want to ask you is, Ms. Harrington, mostly who's in here is faculty and staff, and you kind of touched on it on your slide 10, how do we motivate URM students that show sign of struggling? I mean, you live in Louisville, so you see more of the struggles than we see here at the Henderson Community College. But if students have issues, show signs of struggling, what do you recommend for us to do?
Good question. I guess I will elaborate. When you say signs of struggling, are we talking about just non-academic issues, or just everything, academic and non-academic?
Yeah, academic mostly. The student was doing well, and then all of a sudden, just notice their performance is going down the hill. What are the steps that we should do to be helpful?
Well, one of the things, again, and I'll say this quickly, I've looked through everything through a social work through a social work therapist lens. So we know that if a student that has historically been doing well, all of a sudden is just, falling off for whatever reason, I think the first thing that we have to do is definitely, reach out. What does that reach out look like? It could be a simple, just an email, just to check in, a simple, hi, so-and-so, I noticed you haven't been participating. I noticed this or that. Is everything okay? Is there anything that you need assistance with? And that's what I do with all my students. It's something that simple. Are you okay? Is there something that you need assistance with? Please reach out. The other thing that's important is when you're doing that piece, what resources do you have on campus? Do you have an office that deals with assisting students with some of these non-academic issues? Because it starts out as academic, but once you start peeling it back, it could be a student who's facing homelessness. They have a food insecurity. Someone has passed away. When we start digging deeper, we realize it's an academic issue. It's a non-academic issue that's causing that. So I would say definitely showing compassion, reaching out, and just asking those open-ended questions. Are you doing okay? Is there something I can assist you with? Please reach out. Here's my availability. But then we also got to make sure, do we have things on campus? Do you have a list of community resources? Do you have a listing of different, offices that can provide maybe different resources that a student may need? So that's the other piece in making sure that we're able to assist students, that they have accessibility to those community and or campus resources.
Okay, thank you. Evan, go ahead. Please lower your hand.
Sorry, I'm trying to lower my hand. Hi, I'm Evan Parrillas. I'm the Hispanic Latino recruitment specialist here. And I actually lived in Louisville for 7 years. I went to U of L, it's my alma mater, and I actually took an African class at U of L. So my question for you is, it's very hard for me sometimes to explain to people who are Caucasian that reverse racism isn't really a thing. It's not, like, people try to call me racist for saying some people are blackfishing or certain artists that are they are just European or Caucasian. How would you explain reverse racism and help me at least address to people who don't understand that that's not a possible thing?
Are you meaning reverse racism in terms of me as a Black woman excluding white people from doing things, or doing something that could be perceived as racist to a white person?
Yes, because people who are not, like, I'm Afro-Latino, so I have experienced the Latino racism and as well as the the Black racism. But yeah, exactly. Like, how do you explain that that's, people can be prejudiced, but it's not racism? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, thank you for your question. One of the things I would say is that when we look at, it's twofold. You can have a strong bias and a prejudice against a group. Yes, there are Black people that do have a very strong bias and a negative view against different groups of people. But when we get into looking at racism and looking at how the structure of who is in power, who is in control, and controlling these systems, I would say that on a larger scale, Black people, because we are not in a dominant power situation in the United States, we are not in a position to impose some of the same oppressive practices that has been imposed on us to white people. So that's one of the ways, that I try to explain is like, yes, you have people that may have those attitudes, but when it comes down to when we're looking at this on a macro scale of policies and things that's been put in place, Black people's numbers and that power and influence is not there to have that occur on a large scale where we can say, well, we are creating policies and things that's disenfranchising white people. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Robin, thank you so much. And I also wanted to say I appreciate your impact, because I was part of the Black Lives Matter movement last year when I was living there, and I was very active with protesting and everything. So a lot of things you said, I just wanted to say that I appreciate and thank you for everything.
Well, come on back. We got some stuff ready for March 13th.
Girl, I'm here. So right now I'm house sitting. So I'm right here. I'm on Eastern Parkway.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Please raise your hands. We still got about 9 minutes.
Okay. Michelle.
Yes, Frank, go ahead.
Frank, yes. I was wondering if you'd care to address your own question about when has the United States ever been fair?
Yes, and I'll be very blunt. In my opinion, from my personal standpoint, I don't feel the United States has ever been fair and just to any of its citizens at the same time. Now, have I did any extensive research on this? No, but in terms of just looking at different things that have been documented, that's just I don't think it has been.
Well, I'm going to agree with you, but I'm also going to ask, can you differentiate when you say the United States between the people of the United States versus the government of the United States?
Between the people and so I would say it's twofold. And my question was it been fair to its people? So when I'm talking about people, all of the United States citizens, however we may present that's here being occupied, and I would even say even undocumented, if undocumented folks are here and they're contributing to society, that still qualifies. When we look at like you mentioned, the governmental policies, we've had policies. When you look at the Constitution when it was first written, Black people was listed. We wasn't listed as humans. We were listed as 3/5 a human, considered property. So that started out off top. We're not even considered human, and just moving forward. So we have to look at the historical policies that this country has had, that has put people that hasn't been fair and just to its citizens.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else has a question? Go ahead and raise your hand or go ahead and start talking. Go ahead, Edwin.
Sorry, but I just wanted to ask another question just because I did take an African American course here at the University of Louisville through the Pan-African program. When my professor, it was virtual, so it was really unfortunate that I couldn't, discuss this with her personally. But when I was reading I think the book is called How to Be Black, or I can't remember the author, but it's called How to Be Black. We discussed in our class regarding men of color. We focus a lot on Black men. In your opinion, Black men feel the need to almost prove themselves to be worthy of more than just being judgmental. How do you think the United States has made Black men feel like they have to be on edge, have to prove themselves? They always feel like they are set up for failure no matter how successful or what they do in their life.
Well, one of the things as a therapist that I talk about is the aspect of racial trauma injury. And that, for us to fully understand this, we got to also look at this through the scope of trauma, of racial trauma. Dr. Robert Carter, he has some really good research out. But when we look at, again, to understand this, first, again, we were written in as 3/5 of a human. Then when you look at of chattel slavery, we have to look at what was the role of the Black man. The role of the Black man, you was a buck. You was there to breed. As we, a lot of people may not know this about Kentucky, but I mean, Kentucky was a breeding, once the transatlantic slave trade stopped, where you can't, transport people from Africa to here, there had to be a breeding state. Kentucky was that. Kentucky wasn't just known for breeding horses. So we had situations where we had Black men that was used as bucks to help bring in new, Black people as slaves. So when you look at that part and then get into the whole aspect of, it's the big Black guy, he's angry, or he's this or he's that. We have a situation where we have Black men now having to feel like that they have to, be, I can't do this or I can't do that because I don't want to be deemed as the big angry Black guy or the strong Black guy. And we have to look at how history has depicted that. When you look at D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, I mean, there's one. So there's so many things that has played into that has impacted the psyche of Black men to where we see it now, to where, I need to present in a certain way. I need to cower down in a certain way, because I don't want to be viewed in a certain way that could make people scared.
Thank you. Dr. Warren, go ahead.
First off, Robin, thank you for your story and your honesty. Thanks for being a part of the program, and really appreciate you being with us today. Thank you, Dr. Chappelle, for continuing with this series, and for each of the faculty and staff members who are supporting these conversations that are very important. So I've enjoyed the first two so far, and looking forward to the third, and thanks for everybody being a part of it.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Robin, you want to close it out? We have a couple more minutes. Any final words?
Yes, I just would like to say thank you all for bearing with me with some of the technical difficulties. But in a nutshell, we can move forward. And just some of the tidbits that I included on that second to last slide, these are just reflections that we can do for ourselves and for our family. Change is not going to occur overnight, but because we are educators and we are working with students from diverse backgrounds that bring their we bring our social identities with us, it's just imperative that we take the time to practice that empathy and maybe look at things from through the other person's lens, and not maybe be so quick to argue or defend your position, but maybe just to really practice those active listening skills and really look at what it means to be a true ally. And sometimes that ally may not be you going over here with that group that may be experiencing that oppression. Right now, the best allyship is you using your voice among your group, among your peers, to help educate them about why, about the importance of how we can move forward in challenging some of their own negative views, counterproductive views about different things. So thank you. I appreciate you all very much. And I hope, I'm able to partner with you all again on something.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to give us that wonderful presentation. That will be the end of our presentation. You guys have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Robin.